Hello friends and my dear students. This is the fourth lesson of our course Future Studies. The title of this lesson is Future Studies, Science or an Art. So let us see how the debate about the future studies as a science or as an art, people put forth their arguments. This is based on the article written by Ilkan Niniluto, and this article has appeared in one scientific journal on future studies called Futura. So you will certainly enjoy the debate about whether future studies is a science or an art. Future studies is still seeking its identity as a new academic discipline because in country like India, this is not yet familiar. The subject matter is also not known to many of us. Future studies has borrowed ideas from many traditions in the philosophy of science, because like any other established discipline, the future studies also takes its insights from philosophy of science. It is a philosophy of science is father of all disciplines. The attempt here is to approach future studies with the distinction between pure science and art. In other words, it is a descriptive science or a design science. Descriptive science means pure science. Design science means more of a art. It's an artistic pursuit. So it serves to clarify the question whether future studies is science or art. So science as a science, I think you will have some basic understanding. Science is to establish true truth, whether it is believed by people or not. It speaks about the truth. It connects us to the universal truths. So what the scientific inventions like Einstein, like Newton, these are all about discovering universal truths. So similarly, the future studies is also aimed at moving in this direction. The basic aim of science is to give true or truth-like information about reality. Knowledge about certain laws helps us in giving scientific explanations as answers to why question, why did this happen? Because for science, why is the very fundamental question. The science begins from answering the question why. I mean, answering the why question. The tasks of descriptive science, that is pure science, include systematic studies and explanations of the present state of reality and its law-like regularities. So I think this is how the science characterizes itself. Scientific disciplines like physics, astronomy, psychology, and economics have futuristic relevance because they tell about what the future in their own discipline, what the future is. The futurist's role is to use the scientific method to make forecasts and projections. That is the job of a futurist, and as students of future studies, later you would be doing a similar kind of a job. It is to replace various kinds of unscientific prophecies, the prognosis proposed by religious thinkers, philosophers, novelists, and fortune tellers. Is such foresight possible as a form of knowledge? Foresight in the sense, talking about the future as a knowledge like any other discipline. Is it possible? So that is the question some of us working on future studies would be searching for answers. Mathematical statements like 2 plus 3 equals 5, which are eternally true. It is also plausible that some basic laws of nature do not change. So certain laws like gravitation do not change. They happen to remain unchanged over a period of time. So this is one cartoon depicting the a fortune teller reading the palm and telling the future of this person. So for example, the statement expressing the law of gravitation will be true in 2050. This is what I told in the beginning. The obvious difficulty in future studies is that the events have not been happened. So that is the whole difficulty to say accurately about the future, because before such events happen, after a period of time, we would be telling about them well in advance. Therefore, they have certain difficulties and limitations. So this would mean the future does not exist. That is true. Future as of today does not exist. So it is an assumption. What we do is an assumption. What would happen in 2010, what happened, and what will happen in 2030, 2050. Hence, the statements about the future contingents do not have truth value at present. So we have to agree logically. So whatever we say about the future today, so they do not speak of truth value. So if we believe that science is to say truth, then to what extent future studies can tell truth about the future at the present? So these are the debates coming forth about this discipline. At best, we can guess in the present moment about what will happen in the future. So this is a guesswork. So even though it is a guesswork, we use certain the parameters of science. So one way out from this problem would be to assume that the world is deterministic. That is one set of argument. The world is deterministic, which means the present state of the world completely determines its future states. So this is one argument. If this is the case, all statements about the future have already fixed at the present moment, but usually unknown. So if you agree to this statement, present determines the future, which means that everything about the future is embedded in the present, but it is not known to us. But such an assumption about the world is not very plausible. Is it practical to think that way? If that is the case, then none of us would have faced the problems what we are facing today, whether it is a ecological problem or a war or a conflict, and all these things we would have predicted very much in advance, but that is not true. So therefore, these deterministic models have their own limitations and may not hold good in the context of future studies always. So future studies have some, but limited prospects as a descriptive science. So therefore, as a pure science, future studies have some limitations, because telling about the future accurately is not possible as of today. An alternative view might be that the object of future studies is not the future, but the present. So logically, we may argue other way around, stating that in the present, we are talking about the future. Say, therefore, even though it is a future studies, we would be discussing the future in the present. So for example, to make this point further clear, the object of historical research is constituted by the present traces of past events. So how we construct the history of something based on the evidences available today, whether it is Ram temple or something else. So whatever the evidences are available to us today, based on that, we go back and construct the history. So knowledge about the present is evidence for statements about the past in historical research. I think this point is clear to you. So similar logic is applied in the future studies. Knowledge about the present is evidence for statements about the future in future studies. So that is how the argument goes. In the present, we are talking about the future. So whatever the perceptions we have, whatever the things we are consciously pursue, that is going to happen in the future, based on that, we would be constructing future scenarios. So therefore, the more promising approach is to view the future as a branching tree with alternative possibilities. So this is a middle path. So the third argument, the scholars feel that viewing it as a pure science is also not correct. Looking at it as an art is also not correct. The better way to look at future studies is it is like a branching tree with alternate possibilities. So it keeps on changing every moment depending on the scientific inventions and the events that happen in the near future. Based on that, your distant future is determined or going to take different shapes. The task of the futurist is to investigate this tree as a whole. So our job here is to view this branching of the tree as a whole. Means we have to see all kinds of possibilities that would likely to happen in the future. That is how this complex tree with so many branches we would be visualizing. The futurist should construct alternative possible futures, assess the probability of alternative futures, evaluate the preferability or desirability of alternative futures. So these are the three important steps any student of future studies would be following when he gets into the profession of this future studies or foresight studies. So this is the branching tree of possibilities. So you begin from one and then it branches out as 2 and 3. Again, 3 gets branched into 6, 6 again, 12 and 13, 12 again branched as 24 and 25. So this is a very complex branching of tree. So the future study should view like this. What are the possibilities? If this occurs, what will happen? If this does not occur, then what are the other probable things? So like this, we will be talking about various possibilities in future studies. The futurist often has to apply here the art of guessing. So therefore, it is not a purely science. There is a lot of guessing and there is a lot of imagination required in this future studies discipline. The futurist needs artistic imagination in the construction of alternative scenarios. So mere science and logic is not sufficient to be a successful futurist. One should have this artistic imagination to construct the alternate futures. And future study has an emancipatory function instead of a passive prediction. So it has a liberatory content in it. So therefore, human beings have a lot many benefits to gain out of this. Futurists have commitments of assessing preferable futures. So it is not just saying what are the possibilities. It is also about the preferability of the future. What kind of a future we want. So what it ought to be, a society or an individual, what he thinks to be in the future. So therefore, he should be in a position to tell us what is a preferred future, whether it is an individual or a society or an organization. The alternative to be depicted in the future tree depends on new scientific and technological discoveries. Therefore, it is a very complex kind of a situation. Every time when new things, new discoveries enter into society, our course of future takes different deviations. That is the the message given in this statement. So guesswork means is left to your imagination. You have to guess. So every individual cannot guess in a very similar fashion. So this guesswork depends on his own knowledge about the subject and his capacity to imagine things. Future studies as design science do not tell how things are. So future studies as a art do not tell how things are, but how they ought to be in order to attain some ends. That is what future studies is expected to tell us. The results of future studies typically express relations between means and end. So statement about means ends relationship are called technical norms. That is true because this is like, cause effect relationship, what we talk in the pure, science. Consider, for example, you want to arrive at a situation A and believe that you are in situation B. You ought to do X. Then we should be able to show that X causes a new situation A from old situation B. This is how we do the exercises in future studies. The recommended action X relative to B and A express means for achieving the desired goal A from B. These sequences thus constitute alternate alternative scenarios for the future. So to sum up future studies, when it combines the tasks of exploring probable and preferable futures, or a combination of theoretical and empirical research, methodology, philosophy, political action, and also some kind of an artistic imagination. All these things put together, we would be successful futures thinkers. Thank you for your patient listening. So we have a detailed document on this subject supplied to you as a part of the reading material. You can have a look at it so that you will get some clear idea about how the subject matter of future studies resembles science sometimes, also resembles art, and also it is ultimately we arrive at a consensus that it should be viewed as a branching tree because it keeps developing tentacles all around. So thank you for your patient listening.